Hello again, everyone. Welcome back. I hope you had a good weekend. I hope that you guys were able to be more productive than me last week. Definitely got too distracted by election stuff, all the numbers, so much data, and the maps. I always get transfixed by the maps that they have. I don't know if you guys share this experience, but every time they bring out one of those maps and they're poking on it and it zooms in, and then you start learning about the geography of all these random states. You're like, oh wow, I had no idea there was a college town in northwest Nevada. Wow, that's important now. Yeah. So and then the hours just go by and by. And it's like 4 in the morning. Like all I've done is look at maps for 7 hours. Very tough, very tough. But hopefully we can recommit to our studies for this week as we continue to move forward with our poetry essay, which is of course what I'm going to be talking about here. So in this video, um, I'm going to talk about two of the other videos. Well, I guess this is also a YouTube video, but two of the not me YouTube videos that I also posted this week that you may have seen already. So the first one is the recording of "We Shall Overcome" that I posted, and then the other one is a music version of "It's Nation Time." The same poem that I asked you to read for homework, and that's just a musical version of it that was done by the author. So I think we can view it as connected to the actual poem, and obviously poetry is very much connected to music, right? That's why I thought it would be cool to look at some actual music renditions of the poems that we're studying here. And I know we didn't read the actual lyrics for "We Shall Overcome," but I think you can make them out pretty easily. It's a pretty slow song to hear the lyrics. For "It's Nation Time," when you watch the video for "It's Nation Time," if you haven't done so yet, I would definitely have all the words. I'd have the poem in front of you because I think it's interesting to see the way that he sings and how it kind of emphasizes like where the lines break and stuff. Like you can almost feel like how his voice changes, like emphasis and stuff when you're actually reading the poem at the same time that you're listening to the song. So I encourage you to do that. I want to set up "We Shall Overcome." You might have already watched it, but even if you haven't, I would listen to what I'm going to say here about "We Shall Overcome," and then I would probably go watch it for the rest of the video. So the background, the reason that I'm having us look at that song specifically, is because it was a very important song during the kind of 50s and 60s portion of the civil rights movement. I think it's in "Letter from Birmingham Jail," the MLK essay, that letter, I guess, essay, whatever, that you should have read also for homework. I think it's in that letter he refers to "We Shall Overcome" as the anthem of the civil rights movement. So if MLK is saying that, I guess it has some weight to it. But it was a song that was very much associated with the movement. It was a song that people would sing as they did marches and protests and stuff. Um, and yeah, it was very, very popular, used by the movement a lot. Again, he calls it the anthem of the civil rights movement. So I think it's interesting to look at a song like "We Shall Overcome" and then compare it to something like "It's Nation Time." I think this tells us something important about the kind of divide that we're going to start looking at here within this portion of the civil rights movement. And obviously, it's too simple to say that it's just the divide between MLK and Malcolm X. Like that's the way too simple way of doing it, if we were talking about the civil rights movement for the whole semester, I would have us read many other people, and we would see where other thinkers fit in along that kind of spectrum. um, but there's a definite kind of divide in the civil rights movement, and these aren't the only two sides of it. There's a lot more. It's a lot more complicated than that. It's too simple, but it's kind of a useful way for us to look at it, since this is kind of an introduction to the time period and to the poetry involved with it. But I think we can see how something like "We Shall Overcome" can kind of connect with the more MLK vision of peaceful protest and the Christian church being involved and all that kind of stuff. And I think we can see how "It's Nation Time" is more in a way like urgent and more about, I think, more relatable. Maybe I think more relatable for common people, at least. Maybe people who aren't in the church or whatever. So I think we can see how some of the stuff in there kind of goes more towards the Malcolm X kind of politics. But there's a lot to unpack there, and I want to break it down. So that's We Shall Overcome. Go watch it if you haven't done so, and if you have, I'm get into kind of analyzing it now. So We Shall Overcome. Like I've been saying about all poetry, what do we notice about it? What do we know about We Shall Overcome? I think the style of it sticks out to us, right? Part of it's the video that I chose, since the video that I picked for us is like a choir singing it. But I think we definitely, if we watch that and we watch It's Nation Time, We Shall Overcome is much slower, right? It's even like for the lyrics to get through, it's very kind of slow and almost kind of tedious, but it's definitely very slow. It almost sounds like a hymn, I would say. And I think it makes sense. I think it is very connected to the church and stuff, and it almost has that sense of like, if you've ever heard these I know for sure, like the hymns that the Christian church uses, they're all kind of melodic and slow and kind of in the same vein as the performance of We Shall Overcome that we see there. So I think we can see like the structure of it first of all, right? If we compare the structure of We Shall Overcome with the structure of It's Nation Time, I think We Shall Overcome is much more conventional. Um, it's much more like what you would expect, from a piece of music, I guess. I think it's much slower. It's much more connected to the church. Okay, in terms of the lyrics, we shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand someday. Um, so there's a few things you can say about the kind of the message that we get from the lyrics of the song. And obviously you can have your own interpretation for sure. I'll give you some of mine. So I think, for sure it's hopeful, it's definitely a hopeful song. We shall overcome, not like we might overcome or maybe we'll overcome. We shall, right? Which makes it kind of inevitable. So it is a hopeful song, I think, with the idea being that, we will get to where we want to be. It's going to happen. So I think we can say that. But I think we can also say that the use of someday, I think at one point later in the song, it becomes today, So I don't know how far we should take this, but I kind of think that the repetition of we shall overcome someday, not today, like, like even though it says today at the end, most of the time it doesn't say today. So it's someday, it's in the future, right? It's kind of put off into the future. So for me, I think that this poem, this song, is like the kind of change that it's looking for, the kind of like politics. It's much more gradual, I think. It's more incremental. It's more we shall overcome someday. Like it's going to happen, but it might take a while, And so keep on marching, protesting the nonviolent stuff, and today, whatever, maybe we'll defeat segregation in restaurants, and then we'll go step by step, and eventually, we can have something approaching equality, Um, so I think there's a way that we can look at kind of like the traditional form of We Shall Overcome, connecting to this kind of traditional message of, give it time. We need gradual change. We can't do everything all at once. We can't, we can't create a whole new system here. That's crazy. We need to just kind of go step by step and make a little bit of progress each time, this kind of gradual approach towards change. I don't know. Maybe that's being too hard on it. Maybe that's an uncharitable reading. But I don't know. Based on the lyrics, that's kind of the message it sends to me, right? We'll get there, but don't get impatient. Don't go crazy. That needs to happen right now. Keep on, just keep your faith, and we'll make progress. And eventually, we'll get to where we need to be. All right. So let's compare that to It's Nation Time. I love the video for It's Nation Time. That performance, it fucking rocks. It's probably the coolest thing we're gonna look at all semester. Is the performance of It's Nation Time that Baraka, Amiri Baraka, gives in that video. And so, okay, what do we notice? What do we notice about It's Nation Time? Let's just think about instruments, right? What are the different instruments used in each one? We Shall Overcome. It's just voices, right? In the version that we have, obviously, like a choir melody like that. How would you describe the singing in It's Nation Time? It's not. It's kind of spoken word-ish. It's not rap, I don't think, but it's not super melodic. There's times where he's just screaming, like that part in the poem where it's like boom, 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 da 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 da. He's just kind of like screaming, in a sort of like scat in a way, like scat music, and it's connected to jazz, right? Which scat is very connected to jazz. And I think the whole thing very much plays its nation time. If I had to categorize it in terms of like musical genre, I'd probably say jazz or like funk, some like funk jazz mixture. I don't know. But it's got saxophone, right? It's got a kind of very high pitched, squawking, squealing saxophone, screeching, maybe is the word I'm looking for, screeching saxophone going through the background. It's got drums, it's got a very loud drum beats, I think probably some sort of bass, I believe, also. I don't know if there's anything else. Maybe there's some other instruments in there, but those are the ones that really stick out to me. So if we're thinking about form, right? If we said that We Shall Overcome is similar to like a church hymn or something like that, more conventional, what you would expect maybe, it's nation time, especially if you're like in the the 50s or 60s or whatever. Well, I think the nation time is a little bit later than that, but whatever. Its nation time is radical, I would say, that the form, the structure, is kind of radical. It's different, it's probably surprising, it's maybe not what you were expecting, right? It involves it's not melodious, beautiful singing. It's more like hammering stuff out, kind of spoken word sort of stuff with occasional screeching and things like this. So structurally, it's very different. Now let's look at some of the words. Let's look at the message that we get from the poem itself, from some of the lyrics. So just to start with the title, it's nation time. When is it nation time? It is currently, right now, nation time. Not someday it's going to be nation time. It is right now nation time. And I'm going to do another video this week about this word nation and its connection to black nationalism. And the role that black nationalism played in the civil rights movement. I'll talk more about that, about this word nation. But it is nation time, right? I think if we can say one thing about this poem, it's incredibly urgent. If we said that We Shall Overcome is gradual, is incremental in its vision of reaching equality or getting some kind of substantial change for black people in America, its nation time is extremely urgent right now. Time to, just from the beginning of the poem, time to get together, time to be one strong, fast black energy space. It's time to do these things. It's time to get together, right? So I think it's incredibly fast, the song version of it, right? He says the lyric very quickly. It's a kind of frenetic pace, So I think we can say that It's Nation Time has a kind of urgency in both the video of it and the poem itself. I think just with the words, it's time to do it right now. It's much more urgent. I think it's demanding a change now. Let's get out in the streets and let's do it, right? It even at certain points it calls people to get out into the streets and everything like that, taking over the schools. So yes, urgency, change now. Let's do it. Another thing that I would point out here. It's very into unity, racial solidarity, I would say. And I'll talk more about this in the video about black nationalism, how racial solidarity was kind of a key tenet of black nationalist thought. But he says things here. Obviously, he's talking about getting together. Looking at the bottom of the first page, he says, come together in unity, unify for nation time. Come together in unity, unify for nation time. So it's all about like sticking together, right? And it's specifically along race that all kind of black people need to stick together and be united in their calls for change and their kind of demand even that things need to change now. This is the time. And it's not, I think a key difference is that from Amiri Baraka, I don't get the sense of like asking the government to be better. I think sometimes from like We Shall Overcome or sometimes from Martin Luther King, it's like, hey, government, can you just be better to us? Whereas in It's Nation Time, in Amiri Baraka, he's more like, we're going to replace you, like we're gonna have our own thing. Like, you're irrelevant. We're going to take what we want, So I think that there's definitely a different approach there. Some other things that I want to look at, and this is important, maybe when we start thinking about like what the goal is. Like what is MLK's goal? Like, what does he see as the goal? And what is Malcolm X or Amiri Baraka or the Black Nationalists? What do they see as the goal? Because it's kind of a cliche to say about the civil rights movement and to say specifically about Martin Luther King and Malcolm X that they both wanted the same thing, but they just had different approaches to get there. And I don't think this is true. I think this is much too simple of a way to look at it. Because I think that the goal for each of them was actually different. Yes, if you go to the most general possible way of looking at it and say, oh, well, they both wanted black people in America to be treated better. Yes, of course, that's true. But that, I think, is being too vague. Because I think what they thought this looked like was very different. Their visions for what the goal would be was very different. So looking at Amiri Baraka here in this poem in It's Nation Time, he says things like at the bottom of the second page, help us stop the devil, help us build a new world. Build a new world, I think, is a very interesting and kind of telling phrase for what this poem sees as kind of the goal. It's not just to get a law passed, it's not the Civil Rights Act, it's not the Voting Rights Act, it's a new world. Help us stop the devil, help us build a new world. So and especially if he's viewing the system as the devil, like he says here, then it doesn't make a lot of sense to negotiate with the devil, right? You're not really, hey devil, can we turn down the few degrees in hell? No, is what he would say. So help us build a new world. I think that is an important phrasing for the kind of vision that this poem has for what equality would mean or what it would look like. There's another line here. I'm looking for it. Not totally sure where it is. He does have another line where he says something. He says, "Burn the policies," is one of the lines. So that's another one that sticks out to me. That he says, burn the policies. To me, is very directly the policies, laws, right? So he's not saying let's change the law, right? Oh, we just need a Civil Rights Act, and that'll get us to equality. Burn the policies. Burn that shit. It's not going to help us. So light it on fire. That the system basically cannot be negotiated with and asked to change. It's a much more radical position, I think, that kind of the whole thing needs to be burnt down and you have to start over, kind of brand new. So yes, I think those are some of the takeaways that we can get. Burn the policies, build a new world, come together, unite, unify for Nation Time. So yes, I think those are the kind of messages that we get from It's Nation Time. Definitely urgency, a demand rather than asking for change, and also a vision of equality as a new world. Not just a little tweak around the edge. It's not as simple. Oh, we'll just change this law, we'll change that law. It's no, we need kind of an entirely new system. Is what it looks like here. So at the beginning of when I was talking about It's Nation Time, I said that the form of it is kind of radical, right? Because it violates our expectations. Even if you look at it on the page, right? Even if you look at the poem, it's kind of it skips a line after one word sometimes. The last page is kind of shaped in a specific way. So the way the poem looks, that form, and also the form it takes in the video of the kind of screeching saxophone and sometimes screamed lyrics, I think we can say that kind of radical form then connects to a sort of radical political message that the poem sends, which is not the kind of gradual, incremental approach to change that I would say We Shall Overcome has. It's a much more demand for a complete overhaul of the system, for something totally new, for a new world, right? So yeah, I think that's what I have to say on it for now. So that's how I would start thinking about. I think a really important thing for this essay is going to be to ask yourself how the poems that we're looking at fit into the kind of political ideas of the time period, right? So obviously we read MLK, now we're going to read Malcolm X. So I think what we're going to kind of be doing is seeing where the poems that we're reading kind of fit in within the politics of the civil rights movement, different political ideas of the time period. So that's how I would try to frame this. I love the video for It's Nation Time. It's so good. I'm going to watch it again. All right. I'll talk to you soon.